high street and technology websites are dominated by the flagship smartphones. There is, however, a real demand for the lower mid-tier phones that offer similar functionality but often without quite the same high-end specs and associated price tag. The Sony Xperia E1 is such a handset. There are compromises if you compare it to high-end phones, but there are positives if this is an upgrade or first-time smartphone for you. With a 4-inch touchscreen, Google Android OS, 1.2 GHz dual-core processor, microSD memory and 100 decibel speaker, this has the recipe for success. At 12mm thick, the E1 isn't a skinny phone, but it feels comfortably chunky yet comfortable in the palm of the hand. Whilst the edges are squarer than most phones, there is enough of a curvature that softens the feel in the palm or the pocket. The softness is helped by the fact that Sony have manufactured this from plastic. The plastic feels okay to the touch, not soft but not harsh and not cheap, and there is a very slight texture to it. With a resolution of 800 by 400, the E1 screen has the lowest acceptable resolution on a phone. It is perfectly fine for a bit of web browsing, text messaging and checking the football scores. If, however, you want to check out the latest Hollywood blockbuster in full HD on the move, the E1 isn't really going to be the device of choice. There is an obvious resistance when scrolling and flicking on screen. All work fine, just taps and swipes need to be a little firmer on the plastic screen. The finger does not float across the plastic as it would glass. Running Android version 4.3, it isn't the very latest Android OS, but truth be told, it will not make a marked difference on this device. You of course get all the standard Google services and the Play Store for all your favourite apps. Installed also are the commonly seen Sony apps. Whether you use them or not will be up to you, but they offer some real additional value. Whilst not as memory hungry or as obtrusive as Samsung's interface, as a user you're left with just 1.5 to 2 gig out of the box. There is all the normal personalization you can expect, including the ability to reorganize the app tray, change the background and theme of the device, the number of home screens, apps and widgets. The display can be orientated in portrait and landscape mode depending on the app you're in. You can control the backlight manually or have it automatically adjust, along with changing the font size and whether the notification light is active or not. Generally speaking, the performance was okay. There was lag at times. Some apps would load quite quickly, whilst others like the camera took 3 to 4 seconds to load, which was about passable, but I wouldn't expect to wait much longer. Compared to many of the other comparable devices within the range, I would put the E1 on par with them. Even the most basic of smartphones now come with Bluetooth, Wi-Fi and GPS, so the Xperia E1 is equipped with these out of the box. Subject to your mobile data plan, you can connect to the internet with 3G connectivity too. You should also know that in a time of micro and nano SIM cards, the E1 is somewhat old school, with a standard size SIM card slot under the battery. The E1 does too feature a microSD memory card slot. This is perfect for storing photos, videos and other content that cannot fit on the internal phone memory. Micro USB connectivity is included on this device for charging and data transfer. Offering 100 decibel output is one very nice feature of the E1, putting it on average 20 decibels higher than most other phones. You don't get 100 decibels all of the time. It's based on the music, the volume it was recorded at, and then the speaker on the E1 being up at full power. Essentially, most music will play at around 80 to 95 decibels, with some tracks exceeding the 100 marker. However, loudness is one thing, clarity is another. I have heard speakers that are a lot worse, but speakers that are a lot better. The experience is influenced by the type of music you're listening to. There is a marked difference between the quality when you turn on clear phase and X loud in the sound settings, a difference that will mean you want these turned on all of the time. The speaker seems to struggle a little and end up sounding like it's being stretched, with the sound being a little scratchy and just all round unbalanced. The speaker does a good job of projecting the sound, but as it is just one speaker, it feels directional, and an additional speaker will have made a big difference. Plug a pair of headphones in and the story is better and okay for most, but the focus has been on the rear speaker, which is just about passable. If this phone is picked up by young teens, as I imagine it might be, they are likely to be unaware or less concerned about clarity. Press the Walkman button once and acts as a play or pause button for your audio on the device. A long press will take you to the Walkman app. With the Walkman app, you can arrange your music into playlists, artists and albums as you would expect of most music apps. When in the app, The background colours and pulsing notification light change based on the tone and tempo of the music, which is a nice touch for an added dynamic. At 3 megapixels, the camera, technically speaking, is quite weak in comparison to much of the competition. We often see 5 megapixel cameras becoming somewhat of the norm. The good news here is that the camera shots were relatively good, and I was pleasantly surprised as I had set my standards low. You will not be blown away by the results, but they're not bad considering even low light shots come out with more clarity than I ever expected considering the lack of flash. Self-timer, smile shutter, HDR, 4x zoom, geotagging and microphone controls are all present, as well as changing the ability to set the volume controls as zoom controls or a camera shutter button, as there is no physical shutter button on this device. Another benefit is that the camera is recessed when laid flat on its back on a desktop, so the lens cover is less likely to be scratched. There is a user removable 1700 mAh battery in the E1. It's not the biggest battery we have seen, nor is it the smallest, but a very good size for a device of this type, and should easily last 1 day if not 2 for the lighter user. If the phone is to be used by those who expect to play games, then expect the battery life to be at the lower end of the scale. Sony claim a talk time of up to 9 hours, which is very good, and a standby time of 551 hours, which is over 20 days. Now, to get this, you're likely going to need Sony's battery-saving technology, Stamina Mode, switched on, which is a tried and tested technology to gain additional life from the battery in your device. Ultimately, the life you get from this phone will depend on the usage pattern, but I wouldn't be surprised if the vast majority will get 2 days out of this. At the time of recording, the E1 is available in the UK for $134.99, including VAT as a SIM-free option. The Xperia E1 is a compact, low to mid-range handset that offers many features that make it a likeable handset. However, there is a difference between likeable and desirable. The Moto G falls slap bang in the E1 territory. The 8GB model is another £10, but this gets you a great deal more. You get Android 4.3, double the processing power, RAM and internal memory. Okay, the screen size has increased from 4 inches to 4.5, but the resolution has gone up too, and there is the addition of Corning Gorilla Glass. The camera resolution has jumped to 5 megapixels rather than 3, but the weight of the Moto G is around 20 grams heavier. Depending on how important size and the speaker is to you, for the extra £10 you get considerably more value for money, and the Moto G is a better long-term investment. Spend £35 less and you can get the Kazam Trooper 4.0 for less than £100. The E1 will make many owners happy and will offer a good solid performance and reliability during ownership. However, should you put it up against the Moto G, then there is a very compelling argument to opt for this over the E1. If the E1 was available for less than £100 all in, the story would be very different, and I can see it selling very well. However, as it stands, it's fractionally too expensive for not much more. Customers can gain quite a bit more for their money.